engage out-of-school youth. This series is part of CLASP WIOA Game Plan, which is information and resources to help stakeholders implement the law and to help low-income families, youth, and adults climb the economic ladder. Today's session is sponsored by Campaign for Youth Steering Committee member organization, Gateway to College National Network, and it will focus on successful strategies and partnerships that support out-of-school youth and struggling students to earn secondary and post-secondary credentials. I am Tisha Birds, the moderator for this session today. I am the Director of Youth Policy at CLASP and also the Project Director for the Campaign for Youth. CLASP seeks to improve the lives of low-income people. We develop and advocate for federal, state, and local policies to strengthen families and create pathways to education and work. Our youth policy work aims to advance policy and practice that will improve education, employment, and life outcomes for youth in communities of high youth distress. The Campaign for Youth is a national coalition chaired by CLASP, and it is a group of leading national youth serving and policy organizations dedicated to elevating the needs of youth who are out of school, out of work, and out of the mainstream, and the policy and practice solutions needed to help them thrive. Today I am joined by two esteemed speakers. Nick Mathern, who is the Associate Vice President of Policy and Partnership Development for Gateway to College National Network. Since 2005, he has brokered agreements between colleges, school districts, and state education agencies for training, professional development, and evaluation to implement the Gateway to College program. He has directed the award of $20 million in grants and contracts for programs serving opportunity youth. He is also responsible for the National Network's policy agenda, which aims to provide re-engagement and supportive post-secondary pathways for opportunity youth. We are also very pleased to be joined by Heather Ficht, who is the Director of Youth Workforce Services at Worksystems in Portland, Oregon. Heather manages Worksystems youth workforce programs and investments and ensures coordination and alignment with other systems, including the Department of Human Services, K-12 schools, community colleges, and local government. She serves on the Cradle to Career Steering Committee and the Oregon Career Information Systems Board. She joined Worksystems in 2005 and has extensive experience working with youth who are homeless and or have a criminal background. And she also served as a school social worker in East Multnomah County. So additionally, we want to encourage you to visit CLASP's website to view past webinars on what is included in the law and specifically as it relates to youth activities and career pathways, as well as to sign up for future webinar sessions. Today, I will provide very brief highlights of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act and youth. I will be followed by Heather, who will share Workforce Systems work in Portland, Oregon around post-secondary pathways for out-of-school youth from a local workforce board perspective. And then we will hear from Nick Mathern at Gateway to College National Network about the work that they're doing, not only in Portland, but around the country. We will have time for open discussion, question and answers, and we encourage you throughout the webinar session to use the question box for questions that you may have for any of the speakers today. So as many people know, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act passed last summer with bipartisan majority in Congress. It was signed into law by President Obama in July. Many of the provisions will take effect this July, including the youth provisions, and others will take place following July 2016, which is much of the performance and accountability provisions. It is the first reauthorization of the National Workforce Programs in 16 years. It does update the law for changes in the economy, and it does emphasize newer proven strategies in workforce development. From a CLASP perspective, we feel that WIOA offers new opportunities for low-income and low-skilled adults and youth. It increases the focus on serving the most vulnerable workers, low-income adults and youth. It expands proven education and training options to help participants access good jobs and advance in their careers. It helps disadvantaged and unemployed adults and youth earn while they learn, and it aligns planning and accountability policies across the core programs to support more unified approaches. So specifically, it expands and improves services to disadvantaged youth. It does this in a few ways that I'll mention today. It requires that 75% of youth funds be spent on out-of-school youth. It also has a new age range for out-of-school youth eligibility, 16 to 24. It requires at least 20% of youth formula funds be spent on paid and unpaid work experience, which includes summer jobs programs. It adds youth living in a high poverty area to the low income criterion for youth activities to ease eligibility and service for young people into workforce and education training interventions. For the in-school youth eligibility, it is still individuals ages 14 to 21, but it does add English language learners and those who have a disability to the eligibility criteria. And lastly, I just want to mention that it encourages career pathways throughout the law for adults and youth. I'll now turn it over to Heather, who will talk about post-secondary pathways for out-of-school youth from the perspective of a local workforce investment board.
Thanks, Keisha. Good afternoon to some of you. Well, I think it's good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for having us on the call. I represent the local workforce development or workforce investment board for the Multnomah and Washington counties and the city of Portland out here on the West Coast in Oregon. And every area in the country has a workforce development board. And our geographic region is Multnomah, Washington County and city of Portland. Next slide. I just wanted to point out that we've been committed to post-secondary transition and success for our low-income youth for some time now, and as you can see, our primary strategy in working with young people is to enhance work-based learning opportunities and post-secondary transition success for disconnected or opportunity youth. The next slide is really just to give you some context about the state of Oregon. The governor developed a goal for the state that's really an aspirational guiding principle to create more political will for us to move forward, and that is the 40-40-20 goal. And what the goal states is that by 2020, we want to have 40% of the population have a bachelor's degree or higher, 40% an associate's degree or certification, 20% have a high school diploma, and 0 have no high school diploma. And so the way that our work kind of overlaps in this area is that we're really focused on taking those 0 percenters, the young people who have no high school diploma, and get them to the middle 40, where there's an associate degree or some post-secondary credential that makes them more marketable in the workplace that would create more opportunity for a living wage. Next slide, please. So our primary investments are through our Career Connect network, which is a network of 9 alternative school programs, community-based organizations, and a community college partners who offer high school completion and post-secondary preparation services for opportunity youth. And the goal for the Career Connect network is to bridge between high school completion and a trajectory to complete post-secondary or education and career attachment. And the way that we do that is through individualized coaching to prepare youth for successful careers. And historically, the way we funded college preparation and persistence through these programs is to individually fund each program to offer these services within the confines of their program. And we're moving to a newer strategy around our persistence through a partnership with Portland Community College's Future Connect program that I'm going to give a little bit more information on in an upcoming slide. The other opportunity that the young people who are served in our Career Connect network for up to 3 years can access multiple paid work experiences or internships. And these are hourly waged jobs. In the last 10 years, youth employment has plummeted 26 to 28% nationally. And young people just don't have the work opportunities that they did at one point to really prepare themselves and get the 21st century skills they need to be effective and ready to work. So work or a job is a great context for young people to apply what they learn in the classroom, and it makes their learning relevant. As I mentioned before, it really refines their 21st century skills like proactive communication, reliability, self-management, collaboration, and taking initiative. And it gives real-world context to career aspirations. So maybe they learn that they don't want to make photocopies for the rest of their lives, and they get to see people who look like them in professional jobs and realize there are more opportunities out there than perhaps they had once thought. There's also a lot of research by Andy Sum and others that really shows that young people who work in their high school years are more likely to complete high school, go on to post-secondary, and have higher lifelong earnings. In the next slide, next slide please. In this slide, this really is a representation of the way that we look at the preparation of young people on their trajectory to college and career. So we have one of these college and career readiness matrix with these levels outlined for work experience or work readiness skills, as well as for college readiness skills. And when we say college, we really mean post-secondary education. So it's proficiency-based, and it's an assessment that is across all of our programs. So we use common language and common assessment to drive towards college readiness so that we're all using the same language and that we're all preparing young people around the same skill sets. What we're really shooting for is that level 3 by the time we transition a young person that we're working with into their post-secondary education. And young people can really fluidly switch between kind of a college preparation plan or a career preparation plan. Currently in our system, what we found is that's not working really well for tracking purposes of performance, and also it's not necessarily getting young people as far as we would want to get them as quickly. And so we're looking at needing to revisit the way that we consider those transitions and the fluidity of it. So this is just kind of a way to look at those. So who are we serving? We serve around 1,200 young people 16 to 24 on an annual basis, and we serve these young people for up to 3 years. The 55% of the young people we serve right now were out of school when they enrolled in our services. And now with the changes under WIOA, there's some kind of simple practices we can change where historically what we've done is enrolled young people, re-engage them in their education first, and then enrolled them into Workforce Investment Act funding to supplement that. And what we're really needing to do is just switch that around. So we'll be easily able to increase the number of out-of-school youth that we serve simply by changing the timing of enrollment. 98% of the young people we serve are low income. A significant number, nearly 80% are not able to do math at the 8th grade level when they come into services with us. We test every young person's basic skills in both literacy and numeracy, and that is an area of intensive remediation that's necessary. About 70% of the young people we serve are kids of color, and about 82% had no GED or high school diploma when they came into our program. The next slide is about our partnership with Future Connect. So I mentioned earlier that our college persistence strategy is starting to shift, and what we're looking at focusing on is Future Connect partnership. So Future Connect is a college persistence program that targets low-income first-generation students. And the reason that we're looking at partnering here is that it's become cost prohibitive and not as effective to fund high school level staff at 9 different providers to support the persistence of the young people. When at times young people really, once they transition to post-secondary, developmentally also want to move on from their high school experience. And the staff that are at the high school don't have the same access and the same supports to be able to offer and information in order to help young people navigate. So they don't have access to their FAFSAs. They don't have access to those kinds of things. And so what we want to do is support youth to college through a warm handoff to the Future Connect program, and that way not all but most of the youth we serve go to Portland Community College, and it's a really good fit. The other thing is that we've really developed a mutually beneficial relationship with the Career Connect Network and the Future Connect scholarships, in that when our young people get prioritized for these scholarships that are matriculate from the Career Connect Network, then we turn around and in the summer employ the young people who are Future Connect scholars in our summer employment program. That's one area that has been an issue in Future Connect, is needing to help young people earn income through relevant career opportunities in the summer that don't distract them from completing their education. The next slide is really about our focus on work-based learning. So again, this is where we're able to really people to work. So on an annual basis, we put about 1,000 young people to work, and in the summer is when the bulk of those opportunities happen. So last year, we were able to put 570 youth to work in the summer, and they earned more than $785,000 collectively. This summer, we're shooting for around 750. 85% of those young people are low income, and 76% are youth of color. It's a highly successful program because what we do is we offer ongoing job coaching to ensure that young people and their supervisors have the support that they need to be successful. We have a 79% successful completion rate for our young people, and that requires that they complete at least 80% of the planned hours and get a positive evaluation from their supervisor. And then finally, I just wanted to address kind of looking at some of the outcomes that we achieve locally. And so this is for the 2014 calendar year. We served more than 1,300 young people. 69% were able to attain a degree or certificate. 55% achieved at least 2 grade level skill gains in literacy or numeracy, so in math or in reading. And 76% were placed in jobs or post-secondary. We at one time were tracking how many college credits were earned, because we were trying to hold on to young people long enough that they were on a trajectory to complete post-secondary without being able to financially afford to follow a young person for the years that it would take them to complete. And what we learned from our Cradle to Career partners locally is that around 18 credits is when it's a bit of a to complete, that a young person is statistically more likely to complete if you have at least that many credits. We have some tracking issues with our data system that made that a challenge, and then also some definitional issues. And so we've stopped really tracking that. The other area that we used to track is wage increases for young people. And I think one of the challenges there is it's not necessarily an appropriate measure for young people, because they come in and maybe they have no income and then they leave, and even if they're making minimum wage, it's a significant wage increase. But if we basically work with a young person for 3 years and get them a minimum wage job, I'm not sure that we've really done our work. So that is it for my section, and I am going to pass it over to Nick.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Keisha, for organizing this, and thank you all for your time this afternoon. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Gateway to College program model and how that might dovetail with the work that many of you are going to be doing as WIA transitions to WIOA this coming year and in years future. Certainly some of you are probably already in your communities doing work that is running parallel to or supports the mission that Gateway to College National Network supports, which is that we want to ensure that all young people, regardless of their starting point, regardless of their past academic performance, and regardless of the barriers that they face, have opportunities to access the training and preparation needed for living wage, family wage jobs. And we know that for most of our workforce in the future, that will include some amount of post-secondary preparation, whether college means a 4-year degree or not, I think is a moot point. We know that there's post-secondary training that's a part of everyone's future if they really want to be a part of our kind of future economy. That said, I'll advance to the next slide here and talk to you about traction that we're picking up with this. We are specifically working on youth re-engagement and getting young people who are currently out of school or not going to graduate within 4 years or not going to graduate in a traditional high school re-engaged with an educational process. And so that's the first point at which I think that there's a connection between those of you who are going to be looking at WIOA requirements and this work. And we have historically done this work as a K-12 strategy for school districts who are interested in high school graduation. A re-engagement opportunity is important for them. And increasingly what we're appreciating is that we're living in a world where we've got blended institutional priorities. And we know that in order to really achieve our long-term outcomes, we need more of those. We need more blended institutional priorities. And so while we've seen many communities around the country gain perspective and gain enthusiasm for the idea that young people who had previously not been out of school can re-engage and re-engage successfully in post-secondary environment, we are also seeing communities appreciate that this is not simply a means to a K-12 completion, but this is really about a community-wide agenda, and this is about helping young people to enter post-secondary and enter post-secondary with skills and support needed, but also to enter the workforce. As you can see, are looking at this map and not seeing a dot near your service area. Likewise, there certainly are opportunities to either add programs to a community or to add elements of a program to existing program services in any given community. Our goal here is to make sure that whether or not a community has a Gateway to College program, all communities should have opportunities for previously out-of-school youth to have access to the full range of educational opportunities and training needed to access the economy in the future. I'll go to the next slide here, and I'll tell you a little bit about kind of what is really the essential elements of our programs. And really, they're summed up in 5 points. These are substantially dual credit programs. That is to say, talking about out-of-school youth, young people who have not finished high school. Therefore, they're going to be earning high school credentials and earning high school credits, but at the same time, many of those courses are going to be for dual credit, and they're going to also earn post-secondary credits. And as you heard Heather, you know, they had conversations locally about 18 being an important number in terms of momentum. We know that nationally those numbers are pretty similar, and that, you know, between 18 and 20 credits by the time a student completes high school or finishes a program is really critical for that student to continue to have momentum. These programs also need to be sustainable partnerships, and as such, they are entered into between multiple parties with an understanding that we're all putting something on the table. In most communities, these are partnerships between public two-year colleges, mostly community and technical colleges, and school districts. In some communities, local workforce boards are getting involved, and we're seeing that increasing, and I expect that come July 1, that increase is going to be substantial. We really want to make sure that all of the folks who are working to serve out-of-school youth in a given community are at the table, if not necessarily to be involved with a specific program, to be a part of the conversation to ensure that the range of programs available in a community meet the needs of all the young people available. This third point is probably the most important point that I'll make, and I'm sure that for those of you who do this work with young people, you can appreciate this. The holistic student support is really the difference maker for the young people. Whenever we go visit any of the partner programs around the country, if we talk to any young person in those programs, the number one thing that we know we're going to hear from them is that the thing that made a difference for them in this program versus any other program they're in is that they really felt like they had an extended member of their family who was on campus available to support them. And our programs are really built around having someone who is available to provide student services. We call that person either a success coach or a resource specialist. But the idea that there's someone there to provide more than just case management, more than just counseling, more than advising, but really someone who is right alongside the student and available to help them through all of the challenges that they face. This is really a critical piece of the program. And frankly, I think that many of you probably understand this well, and many of the programs that you contract with probably include elements of this. To the degree to which you don't, I think that as you move toward further post-secondary opportunities and post-secondary training, you'll find that this will be a necessary element, because young people who have struggled in the past when given an opportunity can sometimes perform at a high level for a short period of time, but those tend to be short bursts. And without really intensive wraparound support, young people who are coming from a range of challenges and facing a number of barriers aren't going to be able to sustain that performance without some support. So this is really critical. And I want to just make note of something that, you know, I was afraid Heather wasn't as excited as I was hoping she might have been when she talked about the Future Connect program a few slides back. You saw on that slide a difference in performance of over 40%, 70% of all the, was program completion or fall-to-fall persistence, Heather? Fall-to-fall persistence for students in the Future Connect program versus students who are receiving Pell Grants. And really the defining difference between those services, and there are a few elements of the Future Connect program, but the primary piece is that the Future Connect program uses the same student support model that the Gateway to College model is built on. And that just happens to be because Portland Community College developed both programs. But that holistic student support is so critical for student success. Innovative teaching and learning and intentional collaboration, I'll talk about those both briefly and together because they really are an important part of this model as well. It's critical that the faculty members and the staff members who are providing support to students are given time to collaborate across disciplines and across their fields even, and that is really something that the students can appreciate and can benefit from when they see in the courses that they're taking skills that they were taught in a prep course or in a college skills course coming up and being required. They can really have an opportunity to practice and demonstrate and model those skills that they've been taught. So this is a really critical piece as well. I've spent a minute here, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. and just give you a sense, if you want a point of comparison, who are Gateway to College students and how closely do they fit the students that your local WIOA program serve. You can see the basic eligibility profile here. And some of our programs will serve a slightly broader age range. For example, in some communities they might serve students beyond age 21 up through 24 or 25. But for the most part, students between 16 and 21 are being served. They're either out of school or have been identified as the school district as being at risk or on the verge of dropping out of high school. These are students who are pretty severely behind in credits for their age. You can look at the side and you see that they only have 43% of the credits needed for a diploma, but they're already over 17 years old. So they're essentially some type of a high school junior with sophomore credits on average. They've got a GPA of 1.5. So those students really are academically challenged. You see the piece about the eligible school district here. Of course, in the case of a WIOA partnership, student eligibility could be expanded to be as large as a local WIOA service district might be. I will move again now to the next slide. And I won't spend too much time here, but I just want to give you a sense of what a student experience looks like in a Gateway to College program and how this might overlay with other programs that might exist in a given community. You can see that students, if you look at the left-hand side, begin in a foundation experience where they're going to spend time together in a cohort of classes with other young people in the program. And typically that'll be one quarter or one semester. In some cases it might be 2 quarters or semesters. This is a place where students are building their developmental level skills and also taking a college skills course. Frankly, the number one thing that they're learning during this period is actually how to be a college student. And we use, with our programs, a college and career readiness framework that actually, I was pleased with Heather's slide. You saw kind of, she's got matrices of readiness as students move through progression. Gateway to College thinks of 5 dimensions of college and career readiness, and they include higher order critical thinking skills, course content, learning behaviors, understanding college culture, and metacognitive factors. And really what is critical about all of this is that students need to explicitly learn what it means to understand their learning and understand where they are. So the fact that we have this college and career readiness framework is not so as important as it is that we help students to use that college and career readiness framework and assess their own readiness for moving on to take additional college classes. Once students complete the foundation experience, they matriculate into other courses according to their high school requirements or toward a career major or toward a career pathway. So this is really where students' pathways begin to diverge quite a bit. But during this entire period, they are able to continue to be supported by that success coach or that resource specialist. Now, something to consider here, and this is where we could put the EO in WIOA. This is an innovation opportunity, because what you'll see at the right-hand side of this chart is that students graduate and then go on to further college, but in a K-12 only funding model, students' support in this type of a program ends once they finish a high school credential. And while they've certainly got some good momentum, we know that young people's barriers that they face in life don't go away as soon as they earn that high school diploma. And so if there is a way in which a student might be in a program that's supported dually by K-12 funding and WIOA funding, then you've got an opportunity to extend that support that students so badly need beyond the high school credential and through perhaps the first year of college only. They can get a lot more progress toward their degrees. There's many of our students who, after 1 year of completing a high school diploma, are ready to graduate with an AA because they've already earned so many credits before they finish the high school credential. So that might be an opportunity for some of your communities to think about how to blend WIOA funding and K-12 funding. On the next slide, we'll talk just a little bit about impact. And you can see that in 42 colleges where our programs operate, last year there were just over 4,600 students enrolled. Students graduated high school with an average of 28 college credits. And the K through 12 revenue provided more than $5.5 million in scholarships for Gateway students. So that's in addition to the support staff that we're talking about in the books and transportation. You know, the college tuition that was covered was $5.5 million. Think about how many more dollars worth of tuition and how many more credits students could earn if we had additional funding streams in a given community. If again, we talked about blending K through 12 and workforce dollars. And then just a point of reference to think about how students do after they leave the program. And a third-party study that we did a few years ago demonstrated that 73% of our graduates continued to enroll in post-secondary education. Our local partner here in Portland, Oregon, updated that study for their own students this last year through the National Student Clearinghouse and found that that number was at 80% for their students. And so we know that students are continuing with post-secondary education at a high rate once they've received this level of support. So a little bit now on the next slide about our network and how we work with folks. For the most part, the Gateway to College programs are implemented through a series of technical assistance, planning, and training that is really replication focused. And we certainly customize services to local communities for local implementations within specific dynamics. But those 42 programs all do operate under the banner of Gateway to College and offer a fairly similar program model. That said, we also work with other communities in a variety of ways on questions of program evaluation and continuous improvement, stakeholder engagement, and recruitment and enrollment services. And those are services that we provide broadly to programs that are interested in working with young people who are out of school or young people who aren't going to graduate on time to ensure that more young people have access to post-secondary. And so we do have specific persistence initiatives underway to provide professional development for program staff at a handful of our partners. We are offering recruitment and enrollment services to a handful of programs, and in fact are hosting a conference in a few weeks here in Portland specifically to help programs develop strategic plans around recruitment and enrollment. And we work with communities around stakeholder engagement to ensure that the full range of programs, or excuse me, the full range of service providers and agencies in a given community are at the table for the important conversations that we need to have when we're talking about re-enrolling out-of-school youth and making sure that all young people in the community have an opportunity to get the career and college preparation and training they need. So with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Keisha, and I think, Keisha, you're going to facilitate question and answers for us?
Yes, thank you, Nick, and thank you, Heather, for sharing a little bit of your experience with us today. If you can mute your lines while I'm fielding some of the questions here. I just wanted to say before we take some of the questions that have come in, and if you have additional questions, please use the question box to ask questions of our speakers today. Is that one of the reasons why the Campaign for Youth and our partners here today in class wanted to really focus on post-secondary and what are some of the strategies that local networks, programs, as well as workforce boards are implementing is because through WIOA in the performance and accountability, new performance and accountability, you no longer get credit for just bringing a person to getting a high school equivalency or a high school diploma. It really only counts and is subject to folks actually obtaining employment or post-secondary credential or in an employment or training program 1 year after the exit. And so again, WIOA is really moving towards longer term services, and a lot of what Heather talked about and what Nick talked about, keeping and holding on young people so that we can get them where they need to be so that they can have jobs, have careers with family sustaining wages. So I wanted to just mention how that is very important as we're shifting again towards the implementation of this law. And so I'll start with questions for you, Heather. There's two questions in particular. The first one was about where does your funding come from, in particular for the Career Connect Network, and then also your partnership. Can you talk a little bit more about your partnership with the community college, and if you braid or blend any funding streams to support that work?
Great questions. So we are funded primarily through Workforce Investment Act, soon to be WIOA formula funding. But in addition to that, we were able to identify through HUD, there are community development block grant funds that we get in our community that we're going to support career development services for low-income youth. And so we worked with the city to develop a partnership where they invest those dollars and some City of Portland general funds as well, to the tune of about $1.3 million a year to support the network as well. So our primary funding is Department of Labor, but we blend it with some local city general fund and community development block grant funding from HUD.
Okay, thank you.
Then
Oh,
and
go,
then the
go on,
partnership
Heather,
with
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And then the partnership with the community college at this point is really mutually beneficial kind of quid pro quo. We don't necessarily blend funds right now, but we just got notification this week that we were awarded a foundation grant that we requested to allow us to partner year-round with the community college around creating paid internships for young people.
Thank you, Heather. And one follow-up question, and this is coming, I'm assuming, from a nonprofit organization who's asking, could a nonprofit organization receive, who does financial education, receive funding from a workforce development board? And so I'll let you take that, but I know what's in the law, but I'll let you take that, Heather.
So the question is it possible to fund financial literacy through Workforce Investment Act funds?
Yes, and can a nonprofit organization be the provider of those?
Absolutely, a nonprofit can be. I would say that although that's a really important feature, yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to switch over to you, Nick, and there was two specific questions for you. The first one is, what is included in the college skills course for Gateway to College students?
Well, that does vary community by community, because most colleges will have some type of a college preparation or a college survival course involved with it. One of the things that we really focus on is making sure that the folks who are teaching the course are either the same person who provides the college success coaching, or someone who works directly with the students in other capacities, and so really has additional insight into these students as learners. And then we also provide training around the 5 dimensions of college and career readiness, as I mentioned. But the standard fare, I mean, I don't want to say standard fare as if that's kind of a baseline that isn't exciting, is that most of these courses are really trying to help students do a range of things, including, just find out on campus where the student aid office is, and where the other services on campus exist, and how to communicate with professors, and then other things such as time management, money management, thinking about the amount of time you need to spend studying. Now, for a first-generation college student who doesn't have other role models in their life to help them to be prepared for post-secondary education, we know that sometimes more than what's in that standard curriculum is necessary. And so a lot of times Gateway to College programs will embellish or add to kind of a standard college success course, and I could certainly say more about that if people want to follow up with me offline.
Thank you, Nick, and folks have all of our contact information here listed. Nick, there's a question about how your program model and your network differs or is similar to higher education opportunity programs that are across the country. I don't know if you could speak to that.
Well, I don't know if I can speak accurately to the individual differences between these programs and others around the country, just because I'm not certain specifically what I'm comparing to. However, I think one of the things that really differentiates Gateway to College is that Gateway to College programs really are taking two education models and blending them. So we've got, for the last 15 or so years, a really strong and robust early college or middle college or dual enrollment movement underway, by which a lot of young people who wouldn't have otherwise gone to college are getting chances to take college classes while they're still in high school. And those are great. They're allowing first generation and low-income students to get a taste of college. But most of those students are first generation and low-income students who are otherwise doing well. These are students who enter the ninth grade on track. They've got a reasonably high GPA. Sometimes it's only as high as 2.0 or maybe 3.0. But these are students who are otherwise on track to graduate, and they've already identified college as part of their trajectory, and they really want to be successful. We are taking that model and we're blending it with the high school re-engagement work. We're saying, hey, what about the folks who are out finding young people who have already dropped out of high school and recovering those students and giving them the same opportunity? And so that's what's different about this than perhaps other higher education work, because we're talking about young people who not only wouldn't otherwise be on a college campus, they weren't even previously at a high school campus. And so they've got kind of yet another hill to climb first, and we just know that going in that we're going to have to provide even more intensive services for these young people in order to help them be successful. But we also have seen that with those services, they can be successful, and they go on to do incredible things, and really open doors both for themselves and for other students. For example, Heather talked about the Future Connect program. I bragged a little bit about their success. That is a program that was funded here in Portland between the college and the mayor's office, and happened to be that the mayor's education advisor during the period when that program was being implemented was a former Gateway to College student. So, these things do kind of pay toward the future.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. So we have several more questions coming in. This first one I'll take, and then Heather, I have several for you. The question was around Pell funding for youth without a high school diploma. And I just want to share with the group here today that CLASP has been doing advocacy, and it's a part of our Higher Education Act reauthorization priorities to restore the ability to benefit provision. It is still in the Higher Education Act, but it was not funded. And in the last Omnibus that passed last year, Congress partially restored the ability to benefit provision for individuals without a high school diploma who were in a career pathway program, and that was outlined in the law. We're waiting for some further guidance from the Department of Education on that, but our advocacy is around full restoration of the ability to benefit provision, which we know disproportionately supported positively low-income students of color, and can help the kinds of models that both Heather and Nick were talking about in terms of transitions to post-secondary and being eligible for federal financial aid. So on to you, Heather. For SummerWorks, which factors of your program do you think you owe your highly successful completion rate for youth workers? And then another question is, when you were sharing the demographics of the young people that you serve, we didn't see foster care, foster youth, and we're just wondering if there was a reason for that.
So was it a population beyond foster youth? I'm sorry, I didn't catch the end of that question.
No, it's just foster
okay.
youth.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of young people who are in subcare in our system. Those are self-report numbers, so in order to get more accurate data, I would need to cross-reference with Department of Human Services here, but we definitely target young people who are in care. In fact, we have a partnership with our State Department of Human Services where they fund 75 opportunities for jobs in the summer for young people. So I think that's a really good question around the success of the Summer Works program, and I truly think that it has to do with the ongoing coaching. So the way that we do it is we call it summer sausage making because we kind of throw all the money into a kitty. And so we use our federal funding to pay for the infrastructure. And the infrastructure is the recruitment, screening, and preparation of young people. So we had about 2,000 kids apply this summer. We're going to run about 1,000 of those young people through work readiness training that lasts about a week. It's 16 hours. It's on the weekend and in the evenings during the school year, happening right now. And then, so there's that element of it. So there's a lot of suit up, show up kind of reminder stuff. Then they get assigned an individual coach. And that coach is not, and it's a pretty high ratio, so it's about a 1 to 50 ratio. So each coach has 50 young people they're responsible for. But they're not only responsible to support the youth, they're responsible to support the supervisor of the youth. So if the supervisor is having an issue with attendance or having an issue with hygiene or something like that, they're able to call the coach just like the young person is able to call the coach and say, hey, this isn't working for me. So one of the things that we require is that the coach checks in. They have an initial meeting where they develop a plan together with the supervisor and the youth, and then they check back in within the first 15 hours that the young person is working. And the reason they do that is because if it's not a good match, it's going to surface really quickly, and we want to basically replace that youth with another youth and get that young person that wasn't working out in that placement into another opportunity that might be a better fit. So it's early on, good communication, and it's support to both supervisors and youth. Something that we're going to be adding to the program is additional training on working with millennials and linksters for the supervisors, because we think that that'll help even further to create better success.
Thank you, Heather. And so we have a couple of more questions, and we have a little bit more time to ask these questions. So, Nick, this is for you. Based on the Gateway to College National Network. Do you see a stronger relationship with through WIOA and locally through your network?
I want to make sure. Do we see a strong?
Do you
stronger
foresee
than
a future? Do you?
Oh, do I foresee? Yes. Okay. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We've already been getting interest from communities where Gateway to College already operates to do two things. One, to bring local workforce boards to the table, and two, to build in more post-secondary credentials to the Gateway to College program. One of the challenges of the model, as you saw in the kind of student experience, is that because of the previous K through 12 heavy funding model, we haven't been able to necessarily stick with a student through post-secondary completion. But with a blended model, we'll be able to have programs stick with a student all the way through to maybe the completion of a one-year certificate. And that's something that a lot of our local partners have already begun looking at and working on. And we certainly anticipate that with the increase from 30% to 75% on the requirement for funding for out-of-school youth through WIOA, that there will be many communities who are looking for new ways of engaging those out-of-school youth, and in many communities, partnerships like Gateway are already doing that, and it makes, I think, a serendipitous opportunity.
Great, thank you, Nick. So, Heather, you mentioned that a small percentage of the population that you serve includes youth with disabilities. Can you please share within just a couple of minutes a little bit more about this population of young people, students that you serve? Does it include individuals with cognitive, physical, and learning disabilities? And what kind of accommodations are provided to the students or youth?
That's a great question. So I would say that it does encompass the range of young people with disabilities, from physical disabilities to cognitive disabilities to young people that are on IEPs for behavior issues. So some of our challenges, frankly, around serving young people with disabilities is in the difficulty around some of the measures around the literacy and numeracy gains more than anything, and some of the credential gains. And it has to do with the standardized testing that we're required to use. So we have to use the CASAS or the TABE and things like that. And that's a challenge because these may be young people that won't necessarily show skill gains on that trajectory, but they're absolutely work ready in other areas. So we believe in a proficiency-based model where we are trying to basically move young people at their pace forward and up in their skills. And so we customize our services, and that's the best way to meet people where they are and focus on the proficiencies that they're able to develop and focus on the strengths. So one of the things that we do is we use person-centered planning, which is actually a way of doing career mapping for young people that came out of the disability community. So that's something that if people are interested, I'd be happy to talk more about offline. Another thing that's kind of interesting that we're doing this summer that I'm pretty excited about is this is our second summer partnering with Voc Rehab to get young people jobs in the summer. So they actually have a contract with us, and we're working with a lot of the youth transition programs in the area to serve youth. And our Voc Rehab partner is focused on their transition youth, but we are also working with the Northwest Down Syndrome Association this summer to create several opportunities for young people with Down syndrome to have work experiences, and they will be partnered with an ally. So a college student who is interested in going into the social services field, potentially working with people with disabilities, and both young people will be paid in a work experience, one as an ally and one young person with a disability to complete work. So they would both be assigned to an internship.
Thank you, Heather. I think lots of people will be very interested in your person-centered planning, also given that through WIOA, youth are required to have individual plans, so lots of lessons learned. So we're nearing the end of our time here. We did have several more questions. The commitment that CLASP has is obviously sending the PowerPoint presentation out to all participants and to our broader networks, as well as the recording. We also are committed to answering most frequently asked questions from this session and putting those out for all to review. If you have specific questions more about the Gateway to College National Network, which we definitely hope you do, we encourage you to reach out to Nick Mathern, and also really to also pick Heather Ficht's brain from Worksystems. They have lots of lessons learned over the years as they've been working with this population of young people that are in desperate need of services and investment. Their contact information is included here. Once again, we encourage you to sign up for future webinar sessions, the Campaign for Youth webinar series. We have 3 more sessions upcoming. We have one next week that is around